The diner was quiet that evening, only a few regulars lingering over their cups of coffee and half-finished plates. The young waitress wiped down the counter one more time, her hands sticky from the day's rush of orders. She had been working for nearly 8 hours straight, her legs aching and her feet sore from standing on the cold linoleum floor. Despite the exhaustion, she kept smiling, greeting the few customers with warmth that made them feel at home, even in the small, humble diner. Her life had never been easy, and she had learned early on that kindness often cost nothing but could mean everything to someone else. It was just past 8 in the evening when the hospital called. The voice on the line was tense, urgent. A patient had come in after a car accident, and they were in desperate need of a blood donor. They had asked if she could come in immediately. Her heart skipped a beat. She had donated blood before, but never for someone in a life or death situation, and never for someone she didn't know. She hesitated for only a moment before saying yes. There was no thought of reward or recognition, only the simple human need to help someone survive. She quickly changed out of her uniform, grabbed her jacket, and drove to the hospital. The night air was crisp, almost biting against her skin, but she barely noticed. The streets were mostly empty, the usual rush of cars replaced by an unusual calm. The hospital's emergency room was brightly lit, bustling with nurses and doctors moving quickly from one patient to another. She was led to a small room where the patient lay, unconscious, hooked up to monitors and surrounded by medical staff. The beeping of machines filled the space, punctuated by the occasional murmur of a nurse or a doctor giving instructions. The nurse who greeted her smiled kindly, though there was a weariness in her eyes that spoke of too many nights like this. She explained the situation. The patient had lost a lot of blood and they needed a donor of her blood type immediately. Without hesitation, she followed the nurse to the donation room where she sat in the chair, feeling her pulse race with anticipation and concern. As the needle was prepared, she focused on calming her own nerves, reminding herself that this simple act could save a life. She tried not to think about the person on the bed, just a man somewhere in the hospital whose life depended on this small, human connection. As the blood flowed, she felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. She had given blood many times, but this was different. She could feel the weight of the responsibility, knowing that someone's survival might depend entirely on her. The nurse chatted softly, trying to distract her, talking about light things, about how late shifts could be tiring and how they hoped the patient would pull through. She nodded, half listening, but her mind kept returning to the man lying in the emergency room, unaware of her presence, unaware of the sacrifice being made for him. After the donation was complete, she was helped to a small waiting area to rest. She sipped some water, feeling slightly dizzy from the blood loss but mostly relieved. She asked quietly how the patient was doing, and the nurse assured her that he was stable, thanks in part to her donation. She felt a quiet satisfaction, a warm feeling that spread through her chest. She had done something important without even knowing the person, and that in itself was enough. There was no fanfare, no applause, just the simple gratitude of life being given a chance to continue. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. She returned home, tired in every sense of the word. Her small apartment smelled faintly of laundry and takeout, a reminder of the simplicity of her life. She changed into comfortable clothes, sat down on her small couch, and let herself breathe for the first time that day. The events of the evening replayed in her mind. The hospital, the urgency, the sense of helplessness and determination mingled together. She didn't know the man she had helped, and she didn't need to. The act itself, the small thread of kindness she had extended, felt like enough. In the following days, life returned to its usual rhythm. She continued to work at the diner, serving coffee and pie, chatting with the regulars and helping anyone who needed a friendly ear. She didn't think much about the man from the hospital. She assumed he had recovered and that life had moved on for him, just as it had for her. But in a different part of the city, the man who had received her blood was waking from his coma, his mind filled with flashes of memories from the accident and the strange, comforting presence of someone he had never met. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, something he was unused to, as he had spent much of his life surrounded by people who were interested in what he could provide for them, rather than what they could give. He asked the nurses about her, wanting to know more about the person who had saved his life. They told him what little they knew, a young woman who had come willingly, without expectation, to donate her blood. He was intrigued. There was a purity in her actions that he had rarely encountered, a sense of selflessness that fascinated him. He didn't know her name yet, but he knew that he wanted to meet her again, not as a patient and donor, but on neutral ground, to truly understand the person who had given so freely of herself. Meanwhile, the waitress returned to her routine, unaware of the impact she had made. She continued to serve customers with a smile, to offer a listening ear, and to find small ways to make the lives of others a little brighter. She didn't think of herself as extraordinary. She was just trying to live with kindness and integrity, to do what she could in a world that often felt indifferent. The memory of that night at the hospital remained with her, but only as a quiet reminder that even small actions could matter in ways she might never see. Days turned into weeks. The diner remained her constant, a place where the smells of coffee and pie mingled with laughter and conversation. She grew to know the regulars better, remembering their favorite orders, their little stories, their struggles and triumphs. It was a world of small connections, the kind that rarely made headlines but made life feel meaningful nonetheless. She didn't expect anything more from the night at the hospital. She had done what she could, and that was enough for her. But the man she had helped was different. He was used to people noticing him for his wealth, for his power, for the things he owned rather than the person he was. This encounter had shaken something inside him. He found himself thinking about her constantly, wondering about her life, her dreams, her challenges. He couldn't explain why he felt such a strong pull toward someone he had never really met, someone who had acted purely out of compassion. He started to plan quietly, carefully, how he could meet her again, how he could express his gratitude in a way that felt genuine and human, not tainted by the privileges of his wealth. The waitress, unaware of the ripple she had caused, continued her simple life. She took joy in the little victories, the smile of a satisfied customer, the laughter of a friend, the small moments of connection that made her days feel rich despite the financial struggles. She didn't know that her act of generosity had reached far beyond her understanding, that it had touched someone who would never forget the warmth and courage she had shown. She had no idea that her life was about to intersect with someone from a world entirely different from her own, someone who would change her life in ways she could not yet imagine. And so life went on, ordinary on the surface but quietly extraordinary in ways that only fate could orchestrate. She continued to serve coffee and smiles, to listen and to care, unaware that her simple act of donating blood had set the stage for a story far bigger than herself. In her heart, she carried the quiet satisfaction of having helped someone in need, not knowing that the person she had helped was already planning to return the favor in a way that could transform her life forever. Weeks had passed since the night at the hospital, and the young waitress's life continued its familiar rhythm. She woke early each morning, brewed herself a simple cup of coffee, and headed to the diner. The routine was comforting, almost like a safety net in a world that often felt unpredictable. Each day was long and tiring, but she never let the exhaustion show. Her laughter and cheerful attitude remained a constant, even when customers brought their frustrations or worries to the counter. At the same time, the billionaire was adjusting to life after the accident. He was used to control and precision, yet he found himself shaken by the memory of the young woman who had given her blood without hesitation. In his world, kindness was rare and usually motivated by expectation. Her actions had been different. They were pure, selfless, and entirely human. It was an unfamiliar feeling for him, one that lingered long after his body had healed. He found himself thinking about her constantly, wondering about her life, her struggles, and her dreams. He wanted to meet her again, but not as the wealthy man everyone expected him to be, and not as the patient who owed her a life. He wanted to meet her simply as a person, to see her as she truly was, free of the trappings of wealth or fame. The billionaire began quietly researching, careful to avoid causing a stir. He didn't want to appear overbearing or intrusive, so he started by asking discreet questions among the hospital staff. He learned where she worked and began visiting the diner occasionally, though he always remained unseen, observing from a distance. He watched her interact with her coworkers and customers, noting the warmth in her smile, the patience in her tone, and the way she seemed to make everyone around her feel better, even during the busiest shifts. There was something about her presence that was calming, grounding, and genuine, a quality he realized he had never truly encountered before. Back at the diner, The waitress was unaware of the attention she had drawn. She continued to pour coffee, take orders, and listen to the stories of those who came through the door. She found joy in small victories, a customer leaving with a smile, a regular sharing a personal triumph, or even a kind word from a colleague. Her life was modest, often challenging, but full of moments that reminded her of the good in people. She had grown up learning that happiness wasn't always found in wealth or status, but in connection, kindness, and small acts of generosity. One afternoon, a coworker mentioned that someone had been asking about her at the diner, someone who seemed genuinely interested in her well-being. The waitress brushed it off with a laugh, assuming it was just curiosity or maybe a fan of her friendliness. She didn't realize the person asking was the very man she had helped weeks before, the one whose life had depended on her generosity. She continued her work with the same dedication, unaware that her actions had left a lasting impact. Meanwhile, the billionaire wrestled with how to approach her. He wanted to be honest and transparent, but he also feared overwhelming her or making her feel uncomfortable. He considered introducing himself in different ways, even imagining a chance encounter that would seem natural and unplanned. Each scenario he rehearsed in his mind, but none felt quite right. He realized that no amount of planning could replace the authenticity he hoped to convey. He needed to show her that his interest in her was genuine, not driven by wealth or curiosity, but by appreciation for the person she was. As the weeks passed, the billionaire began to understand the depth of her character. He observed her from afar, noticing how she treated the dishwasher with respect, how she helped a nervous new employee adjust, and how she patiently listened to an elderly customer recounting stories of their youth. Her kindness wasn't performative. It was natural, intrinsic, and consistent. He was captivated by the simplicity of her life, the authenticity of her spirit, and the warmth she brought to those around her. He realized that meeting her wasn't just about gratitude. It was about connecting with someone who embodied qualities he deeply admired, but rarely encountered in his world. One evening, after another long shift, the waitress closed the diner and walked home under the fading light of sunset. The streets were quiet and the air held a gentle chill. She carried her apron in one hand and her coat in the other, feeling the weight of the day but also the quiet satisfaction of having made small differences in people's lives. She didn't know that the man who had once needed her blood was nearby, observing and contemplating how to bridge the vast gap between their worlds. It was a strange feeling for him, the pull of wanting to know someone who lived so differently, yet whose humanity resonated so deeply with him. The billionaire decided it was time to make a move, carefully planning a way to meet her in a setting that would feel natural and safe. He wanted the encounter to be memorable, not extravagant, so he arranged to be present at a local charity event where she often volunteered on weekends. He chose this setting because it reflected her values, her generosity, and her willingness to help without expecting anything in return. He hoped that meeting her in this environment would allow them to connect authentically, without the complications of his wealth influencing her perception. On the day of the event, the waitress arrived early, setting up tables, organizing supplies, and greeting volunteers with her usual warmth. She was completely unaware of the billionaire's presence, focused entirely on the work and the people around her. Her energy and enthusiasm were contagious, and those who came to volunteer felt inspired by her dedication. She moved with purpose, offering encouragement, sharing stories, and helping wherever needed. She didn't think about recognition or reward. Her motivation was simply to make a difference, however small, in the lives of others. The billionaire watched from a distance, noting how naturally she led without seeking attention. He was struck by the contrast between her selflessness and the world he inhabited, where so many interactions were transactional, measured in influence, power, or gain. He felt a growing admiration for her, a desire to meet her, not to impress her with wealth or status, but to engage with her as a person, on equal footing. He rehearsed his approach quietly, considering how to introduce himself in a way that would feel genuine and respectful. As the event progressed, she noticed a man who seemed to be observing quietly from the edge of the crowd. There was something familiar in his posture, something calm and attentive. Their eyes met briefly, and she gave a polite smile before returning to her tasks. She didn't recognize him immediately, assuming he was another volunteer or perhaps someone interested in the charity. The billionaire felt a surge of anticipation mixed with nervousness. He knew he wanted to speak with her, to convey his gratitude and admiration without overwhelming her, or making the interaction feel forced. Finally, he approached her during a break, introducing himself with a gentle, unassuming demeanor. He thanked her for her dedication to the charity and for the kindness she had shown in general. She responded with modesty, laughing softly and brushing off compliments as though they were unnecessary. He listened carefully, observing the way she spoke, the sincerity in her tone and the genuine interest she showed in others. He realized that this was exactly what had drawn him to her: the authenticity, the warmth, and the way she made those around her feel valued. Their conversation continued naturally and without pretense. He asked her about her life, her work, and her motivations, listening intently to her responses. She spoke candidly about her experiences, the challenges she faced, and the small joys that made life meaningful. He shared nothing of his wealth, instead focusing on common experiences, human connections, and the simple pleasures that they both appreciated. The interaction felt genuine, free of expectations or ulterior motives, and he felt a sense of relief that he had been able to engage with her on this level. As the event drew to a close, they parted ways, both feeling a subtle but undeniable connection. The billionaire knew that this encounter was only the beginning, that he wanted to know her better, to continue building a relationship based on mutual respect and understanding. The waitress returned home, tired but content, unaware of the magnitude of the impact she had made. She felt good about her day, proud of her contributions, and grateful for the small victories and human connections she had experienced. In the following days, the billionaire considered how to continue nurturing this connection without overwhelming her. He wanted to show appreciation and gratitude, but in a way that respected her independence and her life. He began planning small gestures, ways to engage that were thoughtful and meaningful, reflecting the care and attention she had shown to others. Meanwhile, she went about her routine, living in the moment, focusing on her work and finding joy in simple acts of kindness. She had no idea that her actions had drawn someone into her world who would not rest until he could return the favor in a way that truly mattered. Life continued in parallel, her life of modest routine, his life of wealth and complexity, moving toward an inevitable meeting where the boundaries of their worlds would begin to shift. Both were unaware of exactly what the future held, but the foundation had been set. A connection born from human kindness, observation, and quiet admiration. It was a delicate balance, a story unfolding with patience, as two lives moved closer together, drawn by the invisible thread of compassion and genuine human connection. Days turned into weeks, and the young waitress continued her routine, completely unaware that the billionaire's thoughts often lingered on her. Every shift at the diner was long, but she found comfort in the rhythm of her work, in the familiar sounds of coffee brewing, orders being called out, and the chatter of regular customers. Her life was simple, but she felt pride in it. She had learned early that happiness did not come from wealth or fame, but from the quiet satisfaction of doing something good, being kind, and connecting with people. The billionaire, meanwhile, struggled with his emotions. He had grown up in a world where people were rarely genuine, and acts of kindness were usually transactional. Meeting the waitress had been a revelation. She had saved his life without asking for anything in return, and her demeanor, her laughter, her warmth had stayed in his mind. He found himself replaying conversations from that day at the charity event, remembering the way she had smiled when talking about her work and the way her eyes lit up when describing small, meaningful moments. He wanted to see her again, to know more about her life, and to find a way to express his gratitude without overwhelming her or making her feel uncomfortable. One afternoon, he decided to take a small step forward. He sent a discreet note to the diner manager, expressing interest in hiring the waitress for a community project the billionaire had organized. The project was designed to improve local schools and community spaces, and he believed that she, with her compassion and energy, could make a real difference. He emphasized that the invitation was completely voluntary, and he wanted it to be a genuine collaboration, free of any influence from his wealth or status. The manager, intrigued, mentioned it to her, careful to present it as an opportunity to make a positive impact, without revealing too much about the person behind it. The waitress was curious. She had always enjoyed helping people and making a difference in her community. When she learned about the project, she felt excited at the chance to contribute. She agreed to participate, seeing it as another way to connect with people, to offer her skills and energy, and to make life better for those around her. She did not realize that the person organizing it was the very man whose life she had saved, the one who had been watching her from a distance and carefully considering every way to engage with her authentically. On the first day of the project, she arrived early, eager to begin. She was met by a team of volunteers, all there to help improve a local school. The billionaire was present, though he remained in the background, observing quietly. He wanted to ensure that she felt comfortable and that her efforts would be appreciated, but he did not want to impose or create pressure. He watched her interact with the other volunteers, noting her natural leadership, her patience, and the way she encouraged others to contribute their best. He was captivated by her ability to inspire without seeking attention, to guide without controlling, and to connect genuinely with everyone she met. Throughout the day, she focused on her work, arranging materials, organizing volunteers, and assisting with various tasks. She shared stories with others, laughed easily, and offered support when someone struggled. The billionaire continued to observe, impressed by her dedication and authenticity. He realized that her kindness was not situational. It was a core part of who she was. He felt a growing admiration and a desire to engage with her, to show that he valued her not for her skills alone, but for the person she was. During a break, he finally approached her. He introduced himself without emphasizing his wealth or status, speaking simply as someone who admired her contributions and wanted to collaborate on the project. She was polite and slightly cautious at first, unsure why he was seeking her out, but she responded openly, answering his questions about her life, her work, and her motivations. Their conversation flowed naturally, filled with laughter, shared stories, and genuine interest in each other's experiences. She appreciated his humility and the way he seemed genuinely curious about her world, not focused on impressing her or asserting authority. As the day progressed, they worked side by side, painting walls, organizing supplies, and speaking with volunteers. Their interactions were casual but meaningful, and she began to feel a connection that was comforting and reassuring. She did not know who he truly was, only that he was kind, respectful, and interested in making a difference alongside her. He, in turn, felt increasingly certain that she was unlike anyone he had ever met, someone whose generosity and warmth could not be measured in wealth or status, but in the simple, profound way she touched the lives of others. In the evenings, after long days of work, she returned home exhausted but satisfied. She reflected on the project, the people she had met, and the sense of purpose she felt from contributing. She had no idea that her life-saving act had already left an indelible mark on someone else's life, nor that the man she had helped had been carefully orchestrating ways to connect with her, to show gratitude, and to build a meaningful relationship based on respect and shared values. The billionaire continued to plan small gestures, ways to express appreciation without creating pressure or discomfort. He sent occasional notes of thanks, thoughtful messages acknowledging her contributions to the project, and invitations to participate in small events related to community improvement. Each message was crafted carefully, reflecting his desire to honor her kindness and effort while remaining unobtrusive. He hoped that over time, she would recognize his sincerity and develop trust in him, allowing a deeper connection to form naturally. As the project continued, their relationship deepened. They shared stories of their childhoods, their challenges, and their dreams. She spoke of the difficulties she had faced, the responsibilities she carried, and the small moments of joy that made life meaningful. He listened attentively, offering support and encouragement but never pity or condescension. Their interactions were grounded in mutual respect, genuine interest, and shared humanity. She began to appreciate his thoughtfulness, the way he considered others' feelings, and the care he put into his words and actions. He, in turn, admired her resilience, her compassion, and the way she navigated life with grace despite its challenges. The community project became a backdrop for the slow unfolding of their connection. As they worked together, they observed each other's strengths, weaknesses, and values. They shared quiet moments of reflection, exchanged ideas, and supported each other through challenges. The billionaire realized that his admiration for her extended beyond gratitude. He genuinely valued her insight, her perspective, and her presence. He felt a growing desire to be part of her world, to understand her life more fully, and to offer support without overwhelming her autonomy. For the waitress, the project offered more than just an opportunity to help. It provided a sense of camaraderie, purpose, and fulfillment. She enjoyed working with people who were equally committed to making a difference, and she found inspiration in the small victories: an organized classroom, a painted wall, or the smiles of children discovering a new space. She began to notice the quiet man who was always present, thoughtful in his observations and considerate in his interactions. She felt comfortable around him, sensing a sincerity that was rare in her experience, though she still knew little of his true background. As days turned into weeks, a pattern emerged. They would meet at the project site, work together, and gradually share more of themselves. She began to feel a growing trust, a sense that he valued her for who she was, not what she could provide or accomplish. He, in turn, felt a deepening admiration, recognizing that her character, her kindness, and her resilience were qualities he cherished and respected. Their connection became a subtle but powerful presence in their lives, shaping decisions, thoughts, and actions in ways neither had anticipated. During one particular afternoon, as they organized materials for the next stage of the project, the billionaire shared a story from his past, carefully chosen to reflect vulnerability and authenticity. He spoke of challenges, mistakes, and lessons learned, emphasizing personal growth rather than status or wealth. She listened attentively, offering empathy and insight, and the conversation sparked a sense of mutual understanding and connection that transcended superficial differences. In that moment, both recognized that their bond was rooted in genuine humanity, trust, and shared values. By the end of Part 3, their relationship had evolved from distant observation to active collaboration, grounded in authenticity, respect, and shared purpose. The billionaire continued to navigate the delicate balance of expressing gratitude and admiration without overwhelming her, while the waitress continued to offer her energy, kindness, and insight to the project and to those around her. The stage was set for deeper connection, personal growth, and meaningful interaction, with both individuals learning from each other and finding inspiration, support, and a sense of fulfillment in ways that neither had anticipated. The weeks continued, and the community project became more than just a task for the young waitress. It had become a space where she could make a tangible difference, see the results of her effort, and share moments of connection with people who valued her dedication. Each day brought new challenges: organizing volunteers, painting classrooms, preparing supplies, and assisting teachers with classroom projects. But she faced each task with determination and quiet joy. For her, it was not just about the work. It was about the human connection, the small victories, and the chance to help others in a meaningful way. The billionaire remained observant, ensuring he maintained a careful balance between guidance and giving her space. He continued to admire her dedication, her patience, and her ability to inspire those around her. There was a calm confidence in the way she approached every task, a natural leadership that was never forced, and he found himself drawn to that authenticity more and more with each passing day. His feelings were no longer limited to gratitude. They had deepened into a genuine admiration and desire to support her in ways that were thoughtful, respectful, and meaningful. One afternoon, the project required them to coordinate a group of children from a nearby school, who would help with organizing a library space. The young waitress guided them gently, explaining tasks, showing patience when the children were distracted, and offering encouragement for even the smallest efforts. The billionaire watched, noticing how she handled challenges with grace, always keeping a calm tone and showing respect for the children's contributions. He admired how naturally she made everyone feel valued, and he realized that her influence went far beyond the project itself. She was creating an environment where people felt seen, respected, and motivated to give their best. After the day's activities, they gathered with the volunteers to discuss what had been accomplished and what needed to be done next. The waitress spoke with humility, crediting everyone for their efforts, and her words carried a sincerity that resonated with those around her. The billionaire noticed how she listened attentively to feedback, how she considered suggestions thoughtfully, and how she inspired confidence without demanding authority. He was struck by the depth of her empathy, the way she considered the feelings and needs of others in every decision, and he felt a growing desire to support her in ways that extended beyond the project. In the evenings, the waitress would return home exhausted yet fulfilled. She would sit quietly, reflecting on the day, savoring the small victories and thinking about the children she had helped, the volunteers she had guided, and the connections she had formed. She had no idea that the man she had once saved had been working carefully to ensure that their interactions remained meaningful, authentic, and supportive. His interest in her had grown from admiration to a desire to truly understand her world, to engage with her on a level that respected her independence, and to contribute positively to her life in a way that felt genuine and unforced. As the project progressed, their conversations became deeper and more personal. They shared stories of their past experiences, their struggles, and the lessons they had learned along the way. The billionaire spoke of challenges he had faced in his world of wealth and influence, emphasizing personal growth and humility rather than power or status. The waitress responded with empathy, sharing her own experiences of hardship, perseverance, and the small joys that sustained her. These conversations created a bond grounded in mutual respect, understanding, and the recognition of each other's humanity. One day, while organizing supplies for a community center, the billionaire decided to take a small risk. He invited the waitress to a quiet spot nearby, away from the bustle of volunteers and children, to discuss the impact of her work. She was curious but open, and as they spoke, he expressed his admiration for her character, her dedication, and the way she inspired those around her. He did not reveal his wealth or status, choosing instead to focus on the person she was and the qualities that had drawn him to her in the first place. She listened thoughtfully, touched by the sincerity in his words, and felt a connection that went beyond casual acquaintance. Their interactions became increasingly meaningful. They began to share ideas about community improvement, discuss plans for future projects, and support each other's efforts. The billionaire found himself learning from her approach to life, the patience, empathy, and practical wisdom she applied to every challenge. She in turn appreciated his willingness to listen, his thoughtful questions, and the care he took to ensure that their interactions were respectful and authentic. Neither felt the need to impress the other. Their connection was based on shared values, mutual respect, and the quiet understanding that they both wanted to make a positive impact in the lives of others. As the days passed, the billionaire knew that he wanted to take their relationship to a new level, but he was mindful of doing so carefully and respectfully. He began to plan ways to demonstrate his appreciation more personally, without overwhelming the waitress or disrupting the natural progression of their bond. He considered small gestures, offering resources for the community projects, helping with logistics, or simply spending time together in meaningful, supportive ways. His focus was on creating opportunities for shared experiences that were authentic, respectful, and grounded in mutual respect. The waitress continued her routine, balancing her work at the diner with her commitment to the community project. She found fulfillment in both roles, enjoying the interaction with customers and the satisfaction of contributing to larger initiatives. She noticed the thoughtful support of the man who had become a consistent presence in her project work, appreciating his insight, patience, and willingness to collaborate without seeking recognition or control. Slowly, she began to feel a sense of trust and comfort around him, sensing that his interest in her was genuine and that he valued her perspective and contribution. One afternoon, as they prepared for a fundraising event to support the community center, the billionaire suggested a small collaboration that would allow her ideas to take center stage. She hesitated at first, unsure if she could manage the responsibility, but he encouraged her with gentle support and practical assistance. Together, they organized activities, designed promotional materials, and coordinated volunteers. The experience was both challenging and rewarding, and the young waitress discovered new strengths in herself, while the billionaire observed with admiration, impressed by her ability to lead with compassion, creativity, and determination. During the event, they interacted with parents, children, and community members, sharing stories, solving problems, and celebrating successes. The waitress's natural charisma and empathy shone, inspiring confidence and participation among volunteers and attendees alike. The billionaire continued to provide support behind the scenes, ensuring that resources were available, problems were resolved, and the event ran smoothly. He noticed the subtle ways she influenced others positively, the respect she earned effortlessly, and the joy she brought to those around her. He realized that his admiration for her extended beyond gratitude. It was a deep recognition of the remarkable person she had always been. By the evening, the event was a success and the community expressed heartfelt thanks for the efforts of everyone involved. The young waitress felt a quiet pride in what had been accomplished, unaware of the full extent of the impact she had made, both in the lives of others and in the life of the man who had been saved by her blood weeks earlier. She returned home tired but fulfilled, reflecting on the moments of connection, the achievements of the day, and the sense of purpose that had grown within her. The billionaire, too, returned home with a sense of satisfaction and anticipation. He knew that the bond they were building was delicate and needed nurturing with care and respect. He planned thoughtful gestures for the future, ways to support her efforts and express gratitude, always mindful of her independence and perspective. He recognized that the connection they shared was based not on wealth or status, but on mutual respect, shared values, and authentic human interaction. As Part 4 closes, their relationship had grown stronger, moving from casual collaboration to a deeper, more meaningful connection. The billionaire continued to observe, support, and engage, while the waitress focused on her work, her community, and the small victories that made life meaningful. Both were learning from each other, inspired by each other's qualities, and discovering the profound impact of genuine human connection. The stage was set for the next chapter where trust, gratitude, and shared purpose would pave the way for further growth, understanding, and perhaps a life-changing proposal that neither had anticipated. The weeks that followed were filled with a quiet rhythm that both the waitress and the billionaire had come to appreciate. They continued to meet for community projects, collaborating on events, organizing volunteers, and finding small ways to make the lives of others better. The waitress had grown comfortable with his presence, appreciating his insight, support, and genuine interest in her perspective. She still did not know much about his personal life, his wealth, or the world he came from. To her, he was simply a kind and thoughtful person, someone who shared her values and worked alongside her to create positive change. For the billionaire, each interaction deepened his admiration and respect. He had long admired acts of selflessness, and her life was a living example of it. He was captivated not just by her kindness, but by her resilience, her patience, and the quiet confidence with which she approached challenges. He realized that his feelings went beyond gratitude. He wanted to support her, be part of her world, and build a bond based on trust, shared purpose, and mutual respect. Yet he was careful, knowing that revealing too much too soon could disrupt the natural connection they were forming. One afternoon, after a particularly busy day organizing a local school library, the billionaire suggested they take a break and walk through the nearby park. The air was crisp and fresh, and the sounds of children playing and leaves rustling created a calming backdrop. They spoke casually about life, hopes, and dreams, sharing laughter and stories without any pretense. The waitress felt a sense of ease she rarely experienced, appreciating the simple pleasure of being understood and valued for who she was rather than for what she could do or achieve. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, the billionaire decided it was time to reveal a part of his life he had kept hidden. He spoke gently, sharing that he was not just a participant in the community projects, but that he had responsibilities and resources that allowed him to contribute on a larger scale. He emphasized that this revelation was not meant to impress or pressure her, but simply to be honest and transparent. He wanted her to know who he was, so that their connection could continue with trust and understanding. The waitress listened quietly, processing the information. She felt a mix of surprise, curiosity, and reflection. Her first instinct was not to judge, but to understand. She appreciated his honesty and the careful way he had shared this part of his life. It did not change the respect she had for him. Instead, it added a layer of complexity to their connection. She realized that the bond they had been building was genuine, and that authenticity was what mattered most. In the weeks that followed, their relationship evolved further. They continued to collaborate on projects, but now with a deeper understanding of each other's worlds. The billionaire was careful to balance his involvement, supporting her without overshadowing her efforts or autonomy. The waitress, in turn, appreciated the subtle guidance and resources he provided, recognizing that his intentions were rooted in respect and admiration rather than control or influence. One evening, after completing a major project at a local community center, the billionaire suggested they celebrate the success together. He arranged a simple dinner at a small, cozy restaurant, chosen for its warm atmosphere and lack of pretense. The waitress felt a mixture of curiosity and excitement, intrigued by the invitation but still unaware of the full extent of his intentions. During the meal, they shared stories of their childhood, experiences that had shaped them and moments of pride and challenge. The conversation flowed naturally, filled with laughter, empathy, and genuine connection. As the evening progressed, the billionaire felt that the time was right to express his feelings. He spoke with honesty and care, telling the waitress how deeply her kindness, resilience, and authenticity had impacted him. He explained that her selflessness had not only saved his life, but had inspired him to be more thoughtful, compassionate, and present in the lives of others. He shared that his admiration had grown into a genuine desire to be part of her world and to support her in ways that were meaningful and respectful. The waitress was moved by his words. She had never expected such an admission, but she recognized the sincerity in his voice, the thoughtfulness behind his actions, and the consistency of his behavior. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and appreciation for the connection they had developed, and she realized that her initial admiration for his humility, care, and thoughtfulness was genuine. The moment was quiet, intimate, and profound, a culmination of weeks of shared effort, trust, and understanding. In the days that followed, their relationship shifted naturally from collaboration to a deeper bond. They spent time together outside of projects, enjoying simple moments such as walks in the park, coffee at the diner, and quiet conversations that allowed them to know each other more fully. The billionaire continued to respect her independence, never imposing his wealth or influence, while the waitress began to trust and appreciate the depth of his character, recognizing the authenticity and integrity behind his actions. One afternoon, as they were organizing a fundraising event for the local community center, the billionaire approached the waitress with a small, carefully considered proposal. He explained that he wanted to continue supporting her efforts in a meaningful way, not as an obligation or expectation, but as a reflection of his gratitude and admiration. He suggested a partnership that would allow her to lead initiatives she cared about, with his resources available to support her vision. He emphasized that the choice was entirely hers, and that he wanted to honor her autonomy and expertise. The waitress considered the proposal thoughtfully. She was aware of the responsibility it entailed, but she also recognized the opportunity to make a larger impact. After reflecting on her values, her goals, and the trust that had developed between them, she agreed. Her decision was not based on his wealth or status, but on the shared values, mutual respect, and the genuine connection they had cultivated over weeks of collaboration. As they began working together in this new capacity, their partnership flourished. The community projects grew in scope and impact, with the waitress leading initiatives that reflected her vision and passion, and the billionaire providing support, resources, and encouragement. Their relationship deepened, built on trust, respect, and shared purpose, and they discovered new strengths, insights, and joys in their collaboration. The bond they had formed was not defined by wealth, status, or obligation, but by authenticity, human connection, and the quiet power of gratitude and kindness. Through the journey, the waitress reflected on how a single act of selflessness, donating blood in a moment of need, had transformed both their lives. She realized that small acts of compassion could create ripple effects far beyond immediate understanding, shaping relationships, inspiring growth, and opening doors to unexpected opportunities. The billionaire, too, reflected on the profound impact of genuine kindness, recognizing that his life had been enriched in ways that money and power could never achieve. As Part 5 closes, the story comes full circle. The waitress and the billionaire, connected initially by an act of selflessness, had developed a partnership and friendship grounded in mutual respect, shared values, and authentic human connection. The billionaire had returned in a way that honored her independence and integrity, offering support and collaboration without overstepping boundaries. The waitress, in turn, had embraced the opportunity to expand her impact while remaining true to herself. Together, they continued to make a difference in their community, their bond a testament to the power of kindness, gratitude, and genuine human connection. The journey had begun with a single act of giving, and it had grown into a story of trust, collaboration, and life-changing connection.